Hello, my name is Jožek, and in this tutorial series I show you how to make a combat system using a finite state machine and a new input system from Unity. In the third part we will see how to set up the attack animations, how to create the attack state, and how to create the DamageDealer class for the sword prefab. If you find this video helpful, please consider subscribing so you don't miss the next part. So I'm here now in the scene and I have a character that can draw sword and enters into the combat state. Now I want the player to also attack with the sword, so when I press the left mouse button, the attack animation should be played. So we go to the player controls and we see that there's already the attack action defined, and that the interaction is set to press only. For the trigger behavior, press only. And it's defined as the left mouse button as an interaction. We have chosen here the tab. Now we set up the animations. For that we need a new parameter. Let's call it attack. And we choose the sword and shield / animation. So we go into the animation import settings here and change the name to combat attack. I set the length to the frame 11, so I start at 11 and I end at 39. Now I set the root transform rotation to bake into position original, and also here I choose baked upon position original here because we will actually change this one. So we use root motion when we play attacks. So uncheck this one and click apply. The next attack animation we will use is the sword and shield /4. No, not the 4, the 3. You can also use the 4, but I use the 3. And this one will be the combat attack 2. And I start this animation at frame 3 and end it at frame 46. Again, back into position, original, and click apply. When we have set up the animation, we make sure that we are on the combat layer and we drag the sword shield / animation and the sword shield /3 animation here with the combat attack name. So then we make a transition from the combat blend tree to the combat attack, from the combat attack to a combat attack 2 and back. Now we are triggering this animation when we attack. So when the condition attack is true without exit time. We are triggering also the second, so like a combo attack when the condition attack is also true, no exit time. And then we are going back from both animations when we are no longer attacking but when we are moving. So when the attack time is finished but we want to exit the combat attack state and go to our combat blend tree or our combat state, like it's called. And now when we are in the second attack state and we want to attack again, we go back to the first combat attack state. So this one here is again attack and then without any exit time. Alright, let's have a look how this looks in the game. So we see here in our combat layer that we are in the default state. Now I am in the combat state, and now of course when I click the left mouse button nothing will happen because it's not now written in the script, but I can manually change here the attack and we stay now in that combat attack. I can attack again, we go in the second combat, can attack again. Of course it's not smooth now, we have to write a bit of code for that, but as soon as I click move I leave this attack state. Same as if I'm here in the first one and then click move, I leave it and go back to the combat blend tree. Alright, but we don't want to have this only here in the editor. We have for that an attack state. So I go to scripts I create my new state called attack state. And I opened it up. Now the attack state consists of 4 variables. First one is the time passed, is the time I'm currently in that attack state. The clip length is the length of the attack animation I'm currently in. Keep in mind that we have 2 different ones, but we can also extend this system to like 5 attack animation or any number that you like. Then I have a clip speed, so when I want to change the speed of the attack animation, I could also do that, and also the entire code would work. And for one, if we are currently attacking, the constructor is like the other states we are always having in the previous videos. Then as soon as I enter the state, I set the attack 1 to false, and I activate the root motion with character.animator.apply root motion set to true. The time passed is now 0 because we just entered this state. I set the attack trigger to true, and I set the speed parameter to 0. So with set float, that's to like when we are leaving then the attack state, that we are not instant moving like with the previous speed, or the animation is played with the previous speed. In the handle input function, I check if the attack action is triggered. So keep in mind that's now here the left mouse button. When the left mouse button is clicked, then the attack boolean is set to true. Then in the logic update, we are counting the time that we have passed in this animation. Now, next two are a bit more complicated. We want to get the clip length time that in that animation we are currently in, and we get that with the getCurrentAnimator clip info. Now that returns a boolean. Or first of all, we have to get a number of the layer index we are in, and when I choose back to the editor, I have here the combat layer at the second position, but when we count from 0, then it is 1, and you can now see that I will always have this combat layer as the second one. Now back in the code, you can see here that that's why the layer index is 1, and then I will just get first animation that I'm currently in. It's like when we have a blend tree, then you can choose from which one, which animation you want from the blend tree. But because this is just a single animation, 0 is always the clip that I want. Then with dot clip, I get of course the animation clip, and then with dot length, I get the current length that the clip has. That's the clip length. Then with clip speed, it's very similar. Also here, click state info, I get at which speed the animation or the blend tree is currently running. Now, of course, when the time passed is greater or equal to the clip length divided by the clip speed, so this is taking into account the speed that the current clip is playing, then and the attack is true, then I will choose to the next attacking state, which is then a combat attack 2 animation that we have seen before. And if that's not the case, so if the time passed is greater or equal to the clip length divided by clip speed without any attack speed, so when the attack is just like false, or it doesn't take into account, then I'm changing back to the combat state and I set the trigger to move. That's the one we have also seen before. When I'm leaving the attack state, I call the exit function, and in the exit function we are setting the root motion back to false, the apply root motion boolean to false. We can see that the attacking state is defined, but we cannot find it in our character class. We have not instantiate this state, so we need to go to the character class and here define it like we did for the other states. I call it public attack state attacking, and down here calling the constructor attacking new attack states with this character and with this state machine. Alright, but when we are now in the combat state, we also have then to make the transition from the combat state to the attack state. We are doing this by creating a new variable, a boolean attack, and when the attack action is triggered, then we are setting the attack boolean to true, and don't forget to also set the attack boolean at the beginning always to false, and then when the attack boolean is true, we are setting, can copy paste this to make it a bit faster, we can trigger the attack trigger in the animator and change here to the attacking state. Now make sure that we have an attack action, so let's go to the state function and see here input action. Yes, we have here the attack action. The attack action is we get from character.player input.actions from attack. So I've set this up in a previous video already. Make sure that you have also this one here in the state function. Here again our previous scripts. Now let's go back to the editor, and we should see now that we can trigger this transition now with the left mouse button. Again, I minimize the window and click on player so that we can see all the transitions. Combat blend tree, so now attack, now left mouse button, and we go back to the combat state. Attack state, combat state, attack state, combat state. Now I click 2 times 1, 2, and we see the second attack animation, and we go back to the combat blend tree. 1, 2, back. And now I spam it, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, just spamming left mouse button. We are staying in this attack state. It works. Awesome. Now we want to actually deal some damage while we are attacking. So I will go to my SWAT prefab. Here we have it, SWAT prefab. And I will create there a damage dealer component. So let's create a new empty. Let's call it damage dealer. And under it I create a new script called the damage dealer script. And let's open it up. Alright, in the damage dealer script we can see first a boolean, which we can check if the damage dealer can do actually damage now, so can deal damage. And then we have a list of has dealt damage. So here we use that list to check if that object has already received some damage. And the weapon length and weapon damage parameters are used to define the region in which the shield can, or not the shield, but the sword can deal damage. In the start function we set that can deal damage to false, so it cannot deal damage just from the start. And has dealt damage we set then here the list, we create here the empty list. During the update function we check if we can actually deal damage. For now it's actually false, and we create a request hit. We are using a layer mask to ignore all the objects we don't want to deal damage. So in the physics raycast function we create a raycast from the transform.position. So that's where our empty game object sits, and then in the minus up direction, so let me show you all the variables here. So the direction is minus transform up, and we want to get an raycast hit information. That's why we created the raycast hit, called here hit with the out prefix there. And the weapon length will just give us the max distance here, and then we put in the layer mask again to ignore which game objects in general shouldn't take into consideration to deal damage to them. So now we check if the game object that we have hit has already received some damage, so has dealt damage. If it's true, then this will get to negative, so it will be false, and then we just ignore this if statement. But if it's negative, then this one will be again negative to negative is true, and then we will get to this part here in the if brackets. So print damage will then just show us now here that we can deal some damage, and then we add this game object to our has dealt damage list, so that when we hit it again it will not get some damage. Now, how do we control if the weapon can deal damage, or the damage dealer in general? Well, we call a start deal damage function, which says that the can deal damage is set to true, so now the weapon can deal damage, and we clear our has dealt damage list so that no game objects that has already received some damage are like protected. And at the end deal damage function we say, okay, now you can no longer deal damage to this weapon prefab. And last, the onDraw gizmo function. You have probably seen them already. So we just, to set it up in the editor, we call here a line from the transform position to the transform position minus transform dot up times weapon length in the color yellow. Keep in mind that this is not the final damage dealer function. In the next video we will see how to create an enemy AI, and then I will change this accordingly to take into account the enemy class. Now in our editor I just make the weapon prefab a bit larger. We can see that this damage dealer empty object is now sitting here at the handle, but we actually want it to be on the tip of the sword. And then when we now increase here the weapon length, we should see when gizmo is turned on, so make sure that you turn on here gizmos, and then when it's turned on we can see here the weapon length of this one. So that means with this, when this raycast here gets hit, then it will deal some damage to the game object. Let's set it to the entire length of the sword, even the handle, something like this. And of course if you move the damage dealer object, then this will also move. So let's keep it really at the tip of the sword, and also from this direction make sure it's in the middle of this. And we do some damage like just here for testing purposes. Let's put it to 1. Now we can close the prefab. Now we set the player layer actually here to player. Okay, it's already set, and we can see that I have defined here an enemy layer and also a rectangle that's for later. So how to do this? You go to add layer and then just type in for the layer 9 you type in enemy, and for the layer 10 you type in rectangle. Now we have to call the start deal damage function and end deal damage function so that we can actually set our can deal damage boolean to true or false. For that we go to our animator, go to our combat attack, and here we again using an event, and let's say at which time we will start. Probably at this one here we start with the damage. So we create a new event and call it start deal damage, apply, and then at some point we will stop dealing damage. So like this one here. So I'm doing a new function, and this one I call end deal damage function, and the same for the second one. I start here with the damage, so new event start deal damage, apply, and I go to the end. Let's say something like here, there, and there. New event and deal damage. So, but the events gets only called for game objects that are on the player itself. So only functions that are on the script that is on the player object itself. So where also the animator is sitting. And we have currently two scripts, like the character script and the equipment system script. So I will using here my equipment system, because it also has a reference to the weapon we can use later. I will create here two functions which then call also this script. Here you can see the two functions, so we call them same as on the damage dealer component, start deal damage, and then we are going to our current weapon in hand, which is normally the SWOT, but it's what we have here, the current weapon in hand. And then we're calling every component in the children that is of type DamageDealer. So that's the DamageDealer object we created before. And here we are calling then the start deal damage function. The same is for the end deal damage function. We also have a current weapon in hand, get component in children, DamageDealer, and an end deal damage function, which is then there called. So when we are now entering the attack state, or when we actually attacking, then we are also saying to the weapon, you can deal now damage. So there's only one thing missing to testing this out, and actually enemy. So let's just creating for purpose one, we are creating here a capsule, and let's call this one bad enemy with a default layer. We are changing this one to the enemy actually, and make sure that the player is set here to the player layer. And just to show that the layer is really important, we will set one here to default, and this one we are moving a bit to the side. Alright, and here's the final product. Now I can draw the SWOT, and when I go to this capsule with the enemy layer on it, I can see I can deal damage with both animations. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Now let me actually change here the animation speed, because these animations are playing really slowly. So let's change the speed to something like 1.3, and this one also 1.3. And we have seen that in our code that this should now also work. And yes, it also triggers the animation, even though we are playing the animations a bit faster. Now it's a bit more like an action RPG. And just this one here, without any enemy layer on it, it's just a game object, and we do not deal damage to it. Again, back to the one with the enemy layer on it, and it works. Awesome. Alright, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much for watching. If you have any question, feel free to ask them in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the fourth part, where we will see how to create an enemy AI. See you in the next video. Bye.